Shout out to the content capture people this year. Thank you, Dominic and his team, for recording all of our sessions this year, which we hope to post on our website for the first time, finally, after the festival. So that way, if you didn't attend, you still get to experience all the professional development opportunities we have here. So thank you for coming to our industry series, day 2. My name is Daniel Northway Frank. I'm the manager of festival initiatives here at the festival. And we just wanted to thank the Harold Greenberg Fund, who's the industry series sponsor. We couldn't do it without them every year. They've been here as long as I have, at least the last 6. So we really appreciate their support for these activities, which grow bigger and better. Actually, it's a little bit smaller. Last year was too big. Reasonably programmed industry series this year. So here we are for our digital co-productions panel, the future of indigenous collaborations around the world, or something to that effect. This is to expand upon or evolve a discussion we had last year about the same topic, but just with regular co-production. So we brought a variety of broadcasters and funders to the table last year just to discuss the ins and outs of co-productions between countries with large indigenous media arts production industries, which is kind of a higher level, not a high level topic, just a nice overview of those properties in case you're thinking about partnering with someone through the official means with another country. How do you do it? And then we evolve that into how can we have potential production agreements outside of established business practices? Are there treaties that can be made between indigenous companies and groups that are the start of something, a new way that is a more indigenous way to collaborate together? So we're actually starting that a bit with the festival this year. We've partnered ourselves in a bit of a co-production with the Maryland Film Festival, who is here this year. We have a couple people here. If you'd like to stand up, Libby Hakaraya is right here, our festival director, and Maddie, who's our social media intern, doing a fantastic job. So they do have a team of 4 people here. They had their first festival this past spring. Jason Ryle, executive director, and one of our filmmakers came and did some curated programs there. But we started kind of a collaboration where Maryland has brought Maddie here to us to receive support from her. She's been a fantastic social media intern, but also she's learning about how does a larger festival run. So through this, Maryland is, it's a professional development opportunity for them, for their team, to see what the potential is, hopefully 15 years down the road, of what the possibilities are with Maryland. So she's here on a kind of an internship, and in the same way, we will be sending someone to New Zealand for that same experience. So it's in our own way, it's outside of established means, but it's a dedication on both sides to supporting talent and strengthening your own organizations with new perspectives on either side. So it's a good thing. So I just wanted to thank our 3 speakers we have here. Natalie Clermont from the Canada Media Fund, Pauline Clegg from NITV /SBS in Australia, and Dan Loyne from Telefilm Canada here. So what we're going to do is it's a kind of an informational session, because digital co-productions are very new. It's still treading new waters and seeking out new opportunities, and in the digital realm for co-production. So it might be tagged onto existing kind of TV or film-based co-productions, but what are the opportunities within those arenas for digital? Like, what are those elements? But what are specifically just digital opportunities for having work that lives multi-platform through both Canada and beyond? So what we're going to do is have Natalie's going to do a short presentation about the current initiatives and a recently announced new initiative. I actually wish New Zealand on Air was here. Maybe someone from New Zealand even has some information about that new announcement, unless Natalie is going to talk about it as well. It's exciting. And then we'll give everyone an opportunity to speak, and then open the floor to maybe just some questions and opportunities. So without further ado, Natalie, thank you.
Okay, so just Is it okay? Okay, perfect. It's not the same view here. So just a quick overview of what the CMF is. In fact, we are a private, non-for-profit fund that we fund audiovisual platforms for all platforms, in fact, here in Canada. We are financed by both the Government of Canada through the Department of Canadian Heritage and by the cable and satellite distributors here in Canada. Our mandate is to foster and develop the industry, to promote the Canadian content and Canadian talent, and obviously to finance all the content that is, not all the content, but a lot of the content that is produced in Canada, for television in particular and digital media as well. You have there some key metrics on how we do, what we have financed in the past few years, so over 2,000 different production in English, French, Aboriginal languages, and all diverse languages that are speak in Canada. I don't want to spend too much on time on the metrics, but you have them here. We have two main programs through which co-production are allowed, as well as Canadian content, 100% Canadian content. We have a budget this year of $368 million. $329 million goes to the convergence stream, where we finance television and related digital media components. So every project that comes in for funding through the convergence stream need to have television and a strategy to be presented on other platforms such as VOD or as digital distribution, or to create new digital media component, value-added content to the television that will help grow the audience for the television and that will engage the audience through the whole life cycle of the project. So we are financing projects in 4 different genres: drama, documentary, variety and performing arts, and children and youth. And also, to trigger the fund in most of the programs we have, you have to have a broadcaster on board, a Canadian broadcaster that will provide a license fee for your project. So this is, in a nutshell, what we do in the convergence stream. For the experimental stream, we have a budget this year of $39 million, and this program is dedicated to audiovisual content, interactive content that is produced for other platforms only, so no television, no film. It's really to encourage the creation of very innovative projects for digital media platforms. What we see mostly in this program is games for platforms, PC, mobile devices. We see a lot of interactive content as well, so ebook, websites, web portal, these kind of things. We are also financing mobile application and technology as well. So if you have a technology to develop, if it's related to the cultural sector, you would be able to come and get money. It's a selective program, very, very competitive. As I said, you don't need to have a broadcast trigger for this program, so it's very open. That's why it's so popular, I guess. But we are able to finance many, many projects through this program, and once again, co-production are eligible to this program. Co-production, so in particular. So at the CMF, we finance both majority and minority co-production. For television, since there are treaties, official treaties that are in place, you have to respect those treaties to be able to get money. And it's still a film, and maybe Dan will talk a bit later about that, who administered all the treaties here in Canada. So you have to get their approval before you can get financing from governmental agencies. For digital media, there is no such treaties in with most of the countries. So it's a case-by-case analysis. Last year, in fact, with a few other partners, we have developed what we call the framework for international digital co-production. So we worked with the Bell Fund, the Independent Production Fund, Québécois Fund, and Shaw Rocket Fund to develop this framework to facilitate the co-production with international partners. We felt that we need to set bases to co-produce with Canada, so Canadian producer knows when they approach one of the fund, what are the basic rules to co-produce and to get money. And it would help them as well to negotiate with their foreign partner, since they are able to showing them what are the bases for co-producing with Canada. In this framework, in fact, we want to recognize and promote international co-production in digital media in Canada and abroad. We want to encourage the international co-production in the DM because we have very few examples, in fact, in the past years of real co-production in digital media. We thought it was going to be that we are going to receive a lot, but in fact, it's not the case. we have not found the reasons why up to now. We thought that because of the technologies we would see a lot, but it's not the case. We see much more in television and in feature film than in digital media. Last year, in fact, I think we financed 2 co-production in digital media, maybe 5 up to now this year, but we have some incentives that I will talk to you in a few seconds that we hope will increase this number. Is it because it's not everywhere? We are lucky, I think, in Canada to have programs dedicated to finance digital media. It's not the case everywhere around the world. So that may be a reason why we don't see a lot. Also, the budget are not as high as in television, so sometimes it's very costly to do co-production, so that may be another reason why. And people are not used. The co-production model in television and film is very well known and established. In digital media, a lot of new producers are there, so it's harder for them to know all the avenues to take. So that's why we are creating few initiatives to help producer navigate through the complexity of funding for co-production. So we have launched few initiatives, one last year that we are pursuing this year. The first one is called the Digital Media Co-Dev and Co-Pro Incentive. It's a program with $500,000 to support co-development and co-production in digital media only with any countries. As always in co-production, we are financing the Canadian portion of the budget, but with this program, as I said, last year we have financed 2 programs, and this year maybe 4 or 5. However, we have developed some matching funds as well this year. It's a new initiative this year, where we are negotiating directly with other funding agencies around the world and to create real opportunities and direct opportunities for Canadian producers to work with foreign producers from other countries. We have a budget this year for this for these matching funds of $2 million. And the first one that we have announced earlier this year is a co-development fund of $300,000 with Rio Filme in Brazil. So you can come there to develop both television and digital media component, whether they are related or not to a television component. Unfortunately, up to now, we have not received any application for this program, so it's wide open. If you have collaboration with Brazilian producer, you're more than welcome. We are trying to do some connections, activity between both countries, but it's not happening for now. We have another one with SP Cine, so producer in Sao Paulo, Brazil as well. We have a lot of relationship with Brazil for a few years now. We are going to the Rio market. I don't remember, Rio content market. and they are also a lot present on in the different markets. They have a lot of money in Brazil right now. Their legislation has changed recently. They are in need of content because they have a lot of, like us, a lot of platforms where this content can be shown. So they are looking for content. So there's a lot of opportunity. You have to find the right collaborator to work with, but this program is also for co-development for digital media and television with a budget of $200,000 for this one. The guidelines would be announced in 2 or 3 weeks.
Sorry, so was that last note? This will be announced in 2 or 3 weeks?
Yeah, it is concluded, but we are opening the programs in 2 or 3 weeks. We are waiting for our friends in Brazil, in fact. It's very busy down there during the fall, it seems, so it shouldn't be long. It will be very, very similar to the the Rio Filme rules, so at least you can go to the Rio Filme rules and see what's in there. It will be pretty similar.
Right. So these are the total. It's each giving, for example, like each side giving $100,000 for $100,000 project total. Am I right? Just by reading
no,
that?
Rio Filme is $300,000, $150 coming from the CMF, $150 from Rio Filme. Right. Boy, I don't know per project what I'm a bit.
But the budgets could be larger with other sources.
Oh
of
yeah,
financing.
for sure, for sure. And we can finance up to 75% of the Canadian cost. And SPCNE, I think it's 50%.
And are there any projects that have? We'll maybe talk about it after. Just some samples of potential projects that have come out.
Not yet.
Guys, you are like getting the opportunity
Yeah.
right now. Like, get knowledgeable and figure out who are the broadcasters and producers in Brazil.
Yeah, absolutely.
Learn Brazilian very quickly, or I guess Portuguese very quickly.
Portuguese, yeah, for sure.
Get a Brazilian very quickly. Oh, gee.
And more recently, we've launched an international co-production incentive in digital media exclusively, this one with NZ On Air in New Zealand. And this one seems to have a lot of attraction and a lot of attention. In fact, we receive many calls, many interest of participating in this program, both in Canada and in New Zealand. So it's a co-pro fund of $1 million, $500,000 from the CMF, $500,000 from NZ On Air. It will be a bit different than the two others. First of all, it's in production, but it will be a selective process. So by December 12, we will receive very short proposals from producers. 3-5-page summary of what the project will be, on which platform it will be presented, etc. Then we'll select 6 projects amongst the ones that we have received in December. We will ask these 6 projects to further develop their presentation, and then we will select up to 3 projects to receive up to $400,000 each. And as I said, the budget is $1 million, so they will not get all $400,000, but the $1 million will be split between these 3. We are organizing next week, and maybe we'll do others if we see there's a lot of interest, but we are organizing a Google Hangout session, a kind of a speed dating between producers from Canada and New Zealand. And I think we should do the same with Brazil because people don't know where to start and who to contact and everything. So we thought with New Zealand we'll try these Hangouts. If you go...
Is that set right now? Like, do you have the people
who
are all attending, or anyone can join this Hangout?
Anyone can join as long as you advise us that you want to join, because we will share the coordinates of everybody beforehand and your contact information, websites, a description of your company and what you are looking for. Okay. So if you are interested to participate in next week Hangout, or eventually if we organize other, my coordinates are in the program, but if it's Nathalie it's complicated, cnzdmf at cmf-fmc.ca. So go on the website. It's all there. Just tell me your interest, and I will put you on the list for this hangout. I think it's really exciting. We have already approximately 10 people that wish to participate into that. So don't miss it.
That's so fantastic. And just
Yeah.
leading off our Aotearoa New Zealand
Yeah.
spotlight last year and these co-productions, there's lots of interested parties. Yeah, I'm like, I want to think about something myself. But yeah, I think there's a lot of partners we need to let know about this for Indigenous made projects.
Absolutely,
I think
absolutely. It's not a fund exclusively reserved for Aboriginal people for Bug Country, but for sure we encourage, and we have already some that are interested in the list of, not submission, not yet, but of interest that we have received, for sure. So I think I'll leave it to that for the presentation.
Great, thank you.
you.
That's super informative. I'm excited. Great, so maybe Dan, do you want to elaborate a bit based on Natalie's information about the telefilm side of things?
Well, Telefilm administers the CMF programs, so essentially you would be working with the Telefilm staff, and we have people whose job it is to answer your questions, so you're not, you needn't feel that you're imposing on anyone. That's actually their jobs. We're located in Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, and Halifax. There's a staff in each city. The session that we had immediately before this one in this room dealt with Telefilm's micro-budget feature program. So it's something a little different from what the focus is of this panel, but I will say that those films would be shot in digital, and a large part of their marketing would also be through digital marketing. So this is an area in which the world is, starting to converge, and we start throwing around words like digital. Then we have to break down, well, what do you mean by that? Historically, the co-production treaties, and Canada has more than 50 treaties with other countries around the world, the most recent one being India, just signed. The treaties on the feature side have been best used at the higher budget levels. And one of the issues there is the administrative costs of needing to file for your approval in both countries, the extra accounting that's needed, the admin, and frankly, the travel. That's one of the reasons that, and I just did a little bit of research and prep for coming here today. I looked, for example, at what Canada has done with Australia in the last 9 or 10 years. And there's been lots and lots in television, actually 27 television projects. On the feature film side, by the way, a lot are animation. On the feature film side, I've not seen any of these 4 films, but I'll mention them to you in case anyone's familiar with them. So there was a $2.8 million action adventure called Malibu Shark Attack, a $2 million sci-fi involving a new ice age called Arctic Blast, a $4.5 million action adventure called Deception, and a $2.5 million drama called Rest Home. So that gives you an idea. And then by the way, as budgets go up into much higher ranges, so let's say 15, 20, $25 million in the independent film world, you start to look at a preponderance of co-productions, because there simply isn't enough money in only Canada, or let's say only Australia, or only New Zealand to do a film of that scope. So in Canada, a film like Splice, just to take an example, which is I think about $25 or $26 million, that was an official treaty co-production with France. And so then you start looking at, well, what does that mean to do a co-pro? Well, I guess we need an actor or two from France, and does that make any sense for the story or not? And they ended up with a French actress as the head of this kind of dangerous corporation. And then, well, maybe you should do some shooting in both countries, maybe some post in one country, whereas you shot in the other. And the rough rule is that you bring kind of the same ratio of the creative elements to the financing elements. And it's quite complicated. The benefits, though, are very high because you receive national treatment in both countries. So in other words, in Canada, you then can go to Telefilm for financing. You can be treated as Canadian content, which means the broadcasters will be interested in buying your project, and they receive Canadian content credit for playing it. You can get tax credits and so on, any of the benefits that are available in Canada and in the treaty country. So the benefits are very, very high, but again, the admin costs tend also to be pretty high.
I would add, Dan, that it grows also your audience, because the Canadian content is traveling in this other country, and it's a good way, in fact, to showcase the talent here.
Yeah, that's a great point. And at Telefilm, we kind of have a new focus on promotion. And so we do try to stimulate co-productions with Australia and with other countries. In 2013, there was a producers delegation to Australia, and our exec director, Carol Brabant, actually went to that annual Congress of Australian producers. And so our thought is that was very recent. Hopefully some projects will come out of that, because it spurred new relationships. Obviously people are talking, and we'll see what is going to come. I maybe would defer to Natalie in terms of you had actually mentioned the budget levels. So in the digital world also, I mean, the budget is a how long is a piece of string question. You can have a budget of $50,000 or $5 million or $50 million, depends on the scope. But in general, there have been challenges at doing official co-productions at the very small budget levels. We wouldn't encourage it, for example, in our micro-budget program, which are the features under $250,000. I don't think it would make a lot of sense. In terms of another practicality of working under the treaties, each treaty has a different threshold in terms of what's the minimum level of participation from the minority country. So in some countries it's 20%, in some it's 30%, and so on. You don't have to do a 50-50 co-production. So this can lead to a lot of opportunities. In fact, one of the opportunities it leads to is the ability to co-produce with more than one country in the same project. So you could have three countries, well, it's not really the country, it's the producers, three producers in each country collaborating on a project. Long before I joined Telefilm, I was involved in I think it was 14-country co-production for TV. I was assisting, I was not the lead producer, and the lead producer had decided to quit the business after that experience. And it was pretty daunting. If you can imagine, even trying to schedule a conference call with everyone on at the same time with all the different time zones.
What was this project? Was it Sharktopus 3?
No, it was,
getting a sense of the type of projects that are of interest at the moment.
Yeah, well, this was a long time ago, and it was that's it leads to another thing about the stories. There's some stories that are natural co-productions. So I'll give you a simple example. There's a romance between a Canadian woman and a man from the Middle East, and while she's traveling. And so that would be a natural co-pro. You try to find, well, where am I going to shoot in the Middle East? Which countries does Canada have a treaty with? Let's maybe construct the story so that it takes place in the country where there's a treaty. So something like that. This is not a real example, but if Crocodile Dundee had been a Canadian movie, what a great co-production. You know, it's because a man and a woman have a relationship, and so first, you know, she meets this guy in Australia, and then they come back to Canada to, you know, so each one is a fish out of water in the other's country. That's what I would call a natural co-pro. But what some people do is they try to kind of fit a square peg into a round hole and artificially impose elements. And this is where creatively you can run into trouble when you're trying to impose elements that don't make sense. It's a challenge. It's not an insurmountable challenge. It's a matter of choosing the right project.
It's actually a great parameter to even just start with an idea, potentially, if you want it to be that big. Like, how we have these elements, how can we, like I'm just thinking right now, like different ways, at least for me, well, not for me, but for just the audience that we're speaking to. I don't know if I should say my idea, you're going to steal it. But I just think there are themes that are prevalent in each Indigenous community of the same struggles that, challenges, political, social, that could definitely have co-production. I'm just going to say it, and I hope it comes true. Just the challenges of missing and murdered Aboriginal women spans every one of these communities. I think there's definitely a documentary feature that's of interest, but I think there could be a wonderful dramatic feature that spans something. So if anyone wants to work with me on this, but I just see like it's such a prevalent thing, but it's such an interesting thing. Women's issues, like the balance of just power, like there's so many different elements. I just think it's a common thing that like a co-production between Indigenous nations on a creative story about that would be awesome.
Right. Now, the other thing that I'll say is that you don't need to necessarily work under a treaty to work with somebody from another country, nor just to shoot in another country. This happens all the time, and I guess the prime example is some of the American production that shoots in Canada. Those are not co-productions. There is no treaty between Canada and the US. So by definition, it's not a co-production. And so creatively, you needn't feel limited by the treaty. It's always possible to shoot in another country. It's always possible to form a relationship in another country. The treaties, though, are supposed to give an extra added incentive to people from different countries to work together and to give the film national treatment in each nation.
And I think I think maybe this is a good kind of bridge into Pauline speaking. We are both at a conference in Winnipeg called the World Indigenous Television Broadcasters Conference, or WITBIN. It happens every... Network. Right, but the conference has a C on the end, right? Acronym that. But yeah, it was the first time I was there. It was hosted in Winnipeg by APTN, and was a fantastic conference. And I really took away a lot of important opportunities that I saw for at least our artists. And one of those, which they had a co-production kind of panel on there, and it really hit me, like co-productions and all that stuff is very administrative and a whole lot of work, and you have to be really passionate about the story you're telling. Josette Normando was one of the panelists there, who's, I would say she's like the co-production queen, I would say, in Canada. She's does TV series across multi-country co-productions. She's incredibly passionate about the work that she does, but predominantly historical kind of TV documentary series. But you can just feel the weight of the administration that she has to do to make this happen. So although it's the opportunities to have these projects come together, each extra partner you add is another layer of complication. So anyway, just something to consider. It's a great opportunity, but there's a huge administrative task ahead of you on a producer level, at least. So yeah, let's move into Pauline. I'd love to hear about your history of co-productions and opportunities that are...
G'day, Wajinyaga Pauline Niga Yeager. It's so lovely to be here on this country again. I was a part of the original team of Imaginative way back 15 odd years ago. And actually Cynthia came to Australia 16 years ago, and she said, I'm thinking about this festival. I said, make it international and we'll come to you. And it's lovely to have now this sort of conversation on a bigger scale with so many of our international brothers and sisters in the filmmaking industry. I think one of the things that we haven't talked about is that the broadcasters often need to be involved with your co-pros in terms of the elements, and a lot of us don't actually know each other, and that's why the creation of Whitbin came about. And we also, some know how to use the digital space really well and some don't, or are new to that sort of world. And so last year, Whitbin, the collective of the 8 Indigenous broadcasters from around the world, decided to work together on a digital process that would then turn into a broadcast capability. And so we created Whitbin Our Songs, and each of the broadcasters had to produce 4 to 6 songs, both in language, and we had like a thematic of a green stool. I think it was because we were in Wales at the time, the time before, when they came up with the concept of a green stool. And so that there was a thematic that we could use to sort of that was a bit out there and not related to an Indigenous thematic. Other than that, they had to be Indigenous songs, and that they and at least one of them had to be in language, and one had to be a youth, and one had to be an elder. So they did have a couple of different ideas about it. And I think what it did was it allowed us as broadcasters to see the capabilities of each other. Like Uiwi TV in Hawaii, only run on $2 million a year. We run on 15. So trying to figure out how each of the different international networks can work together to be better equipped to have conversations about the digital production for our producers. And also because we're all TV stations, it's about how do we make a broadcastable component out of it. And we wanted to do it the reverse to what we usually do, which is you come up with a documentary series or whatever, and then you have a digital arm on the back end of it. We decided to turn it the opposite way to see how that would work. And so it allowed, in a way, all of us to sort of really think about how to make the series. And in the end, we had something like 68 songs that made 10 half hours for our organisation in the end. And each country created content for the broadcast of those songs. So I think we got the idea from Sami TV in Norway. They did a sort of a Eurovision panel talking about the songs, and they sort of ranked them and showed their favourite songs from each of the countries. And so we did the same thing in Australia, and I think APTN's going to just use them as interstitials at some point. So I think that is something that we thought worked really successfully in terms of building a relationship with all the broadcasters, so that then we could sort of like say we know each of the broadcasters. I think that's one of the biggest issues, is that you guys are going to pitch ideas to your broadcasters, but then the broadcasters themselves aren't talking to each other. And it's great now that we have Whitbin, so that I can talk to Monica at APTN, or anyone from around the world now because of the Whitbin sort of situation. I think that the one that we're doing for this next 2 years, because Whitbin's every 2 years, so they come up with a thematic. So the one we're doing is a mini doc series, because we want to sort of stretch it towards that area, so that we can then start opening the world up to producers outside, to enable them to sort of come to us with ideas as well. And I think that's where hopefully we're hoping that this will build towards being able to get through the cipher of the treaties and understand them enough, so that, because we haven't touched the treaty arm yet. I think we did with Hard Rock Medical. We did some sort of co-pro with Hard Rock Medical because it had an Australian actor in it. NITV SBS was the broadcaster, and then it got treaty funds for them to go I think on Ep 11 to Australia, come to Australia for his arc of the story. But I think it is really hard it's really hard when the broadcasters are often new to the game of co-productions as well. And I think we have to be real about that if you're going to come with us as Indigenous broadcasters, all of us have to be learning a big process in how that works. And so it's often the producers themselves teaching the broadcasters how to do the co-pros, in a lot of ways. And we're trying to get through all of that. I mean, I've worked on probably 3 or 4 co-pros myself as a producer outside, and we, a very long time ago, tried to, through Imaginative, create Creative Circle with New Zealand, Canada and Australia. And me and Libby drove to Ottawa after one of the Imaginatives and tried to work out the frameworks for that treaty to happen. But it even after a week of writing all the submissions and, getting all that prep work together, we still found it hard to then go back to our countries and explain how the process works enough for people to grab a hold of it. So I think we have to be open to the challenges, but also realistic that we have to have a better communication. And I think out of stuff like this and Whitbin, we're getting there. But it's much, I just thought I'd put a reality sort of hit onto people. It is much harder, and I think it's also that we have to be more energised about wanting to do those sort of thematics with each other. I think that it's obvious that we should be working in co-pros. I think it's an area that, it's the reason why I come to this festival, is it re-energises me as a producer and as a broadcaster to see the similarities in our world. And I think that the digital age is an area where we could really push the barriers and possibly not be in the treaty world in terms of that sort of stuff, because it's a little bit cheaper. It's just about, can the broadcaster manage those websites afterwards as well? Because that's the thing, is we're creating this content that's a new content for television producers.
That lives forever.
Yeah.
Outside of a window, lives on the digital realm and has to be updated.
It has to be mediated and supported and mentored in its own life.
And that's a great opportunity at these events, is having a united passion for the story from a creative production and broadcast level. Makes everyone want to give that 110%, or even if it was 50, I'm going to give 55% of my attention to it. Makes the difference whether these are successful or not. But and that's for me at least, the exciting energy of the festival here, is that everyone is so open and collaborative and on every level. Definitely, we're gathering also just for Canada's broadcasters. The Alliance of Aboriginal Media Producers has their annual AGM here just prior to the festival, and had a 2-day conference, which I wish I was at. I was running around crashing an auto share car, but apparently it was amazing, like a watershed moment for a united, all the broadcasters saying that we are doing something about Indigenous production in Canada. Sounds like it was a watershed moment, and I'm really excited that there is, at least in Canada now, a united, hopefully. Each year it's better. We had some high-level talks last year to start things off, but it's going in such a great direction.
And I think they have to be, I think as broadcasters we have to say what we're looking for, because I think that's the thing, is that as broadcasters, we know what we're looking for within the next year, 2 years. And so how do you guys get that sort of kind of information for us to be able to share that to you, and then for our ideas to match the Canadian idea or the New Zealand idea or whatever in terms of the commission arm?
Yeah, so it's exciting. It's a lot of great things that could come out of this. So it's 11:17, and we're due to end at 11:30. And I just wanted to give everyone an opportunity, if you had questions or directions. I'm super excited about those funds and hope you're all ready to go jump on a great idea. Because, again, not a lot of submissions. Like I hear from the CMF constantly, Francesca Asinelli, who's there as well, just that it's really a lack of applications sometimes. It's like there's funds and monies available, and it hits certain check marks with these funders too. So the ideas are there. It's just getting this information out through these opportunities. I think on a more dedicated basis, if we can help.
It's a new initiative also, the matching funds. So we have to get the time, to permit people to know the programs, to meet with other partners around the world. So it's not instantaneous. Do we say that? So it takes time. So we hope we'll be able to renew this program next year, even if we didn't receive a lot of projects this year, because it takes time to implement these things.
Yeah, get the word out.
Yeah.
Just like our festival hub. Started a little slowly yesterday, but now it'll be the destination, which is where you should all go. If you haven't been there yet, just across there behind that building, down a dark alley and up an elevator. But it's a fantastic space to take meetings if you are a delegate. So I just wanted to open up the floor if anyone has any questions. Jim Compton, over in the blue. Is there a microphone anywhere? Is there a microphone at the back that we can, Lindsay, or you can get a volunteer to, or the sound guy himself. Jim Compton, who's the artistic director at the Adam Beach Film Institute, and there you go.
Hello.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it's great, the initiatives. I know that the broadcasters put out something, at least here in Canada, at APTN called the request for proposals, right? Basically, they tell you what they want. And that's where the producers get their ideas and move forward based on that. So I was wondering if Telefilm and CMF are on that same page, and maybe the other broadcasters. Do they collaborate? Do they figure out, well, what does everybody want, and can we put that out there, and so we know what you want?
At the CMF, we don't select the projects that we finance. It's the broadcasters who are selecting the programs. So APTN, through their performance envelope and through the Aboriginal language programs, are triggering projects to receive CMF funding, but it's really them that are selecting the projects.
I think at Telefilm, we see the job more as setting the stage rather than actually doing matchmaking. So, for example, we could set the stage by, sponsoring a seminar, by sponsoring a person to go to a certain market so that he or she can meet people and make those relationships. We also, it just depends on the expertise of the particular staff people. So, for example, because of my prior background, I'm well known among the sales agents. And I have no problem at all if somebody tells me, oh, did you ever meet so-and-so? Can you make that intro? I have no problem at all doing that. And I enjoy doing that. And we also have staff that travels. It's not me, by the way, but travels, for example, to Cannes, to MIP, to MIPCOM, to Sundance, and so on. And one of the jobs there would be to make sure that none of our Canadian producers are kind of sitting in a corner, but rather, get out, come on, let's go to lunch, let's meet these people. So I think that's more of the role. And in terms of the broadcasters, well, Telefilm is feature film oriented, except for the staff that's administering the CMF. So on the feature side, broadcast sales or licenses are very important to the funding of features, but they're one of the crazy quilt of partners that you need in order to create a feature. They're not normally the lead partner, and the reason is that if the broadcaster is the lead partner, you have a pretty good indication that what you have is a product or a project that's more appropriate for broadcast than for theatrical, and so it probably isn't something that our feature staff is going to be taking the lead in trying to put together.
Interesting. Yeah. Any other?
Yeah, just so the indigenous broadcasters, do they put out a request for proposals based on the funds that they get together?
A look, I think we're trying to know how each other works, and I think that's what our songs did. The documentary series that we're doing in the next round of the digital age is a sort of day in a life of young people in language in 5 minutes. And we had an unfortunate passing of the Secretariat of Whitbin just recently. So it's sort of slowed the momentum down a little bit, but we're hoping that that will help to develop a sort of pathway for how we move forward in the next couple of years. I think we all know that digital, there are some broadcasters that don't actually have televisions anymore. They all run on the digital wave. Uiwi and I think it's Norway are fully in the digital world. They're just websites now and not a TV station per se, and that's they showed a great thing actually at the Whitbin conference last year where they said they walked around with a camera through his house of 5 kids and his wife, and every single one of them was on a device of some sort, and there was no television in the house anymore, and and so it really taught a whole lot of people about how the social media world is now playing a part and how most of our kids are not watching TV to sit down and watch it at 7:30. They watch it when they want to. And so we have to, as broadcasters, change the way that we do business. And we know that, and we're trying to figure out how to do that because we still have a 24/7 channel to play. So, it's a real big issue for us in terms of how to make that arm work but still maintain that, because that's where we get our government funding from.
And it's just happening so quickly. It's going from them turning off the TV and turning on that, but there's a whole 3-year process before a broadcaster or government changes their digital
Absolutely.
Strategies, right?
Yeah,
So
and I think it's also that we know that our young people know about our programs through social media way more than they do if they see an ad on the TV. We have more likes on our NITV Facebook page than we do ratings. So it's a sort of conundrum in a way, because we sort of go, well, we know that we're getting the likes and we know that the community are engaged with our stories, but it's all in the digital world that they're sort of kind of doing that sort of kind of stuff. And I think, through SBS On Demand, which, a lot of the channels now have that on demand or iView sort of kind of context, so that you can watch it when you want. That's one area that all of the Whitbin are talking about. Maybe that's where a telefeature series could create itself on the international scale, is through that sort of kind of iView world.
Yeah, and it is so many opportunities, in particular with Indigenous communities such as Australia and Canada, where it's remote communities, far away, not necessarily access to particular opportunities, but they can, and everyone has a cell phone these days, no matter how far away you are, and
Absolutely.
can be experiencing an Indigenous story on there. That is a fantastic opportunity.
Absolutely.
Are there any other questions right now, or? So there is a brunch happening after that is kind of to bring this into like a creative side and start collaborating thing. I believe it's invite only, but I think if anyone's interested, you could. Actually, I'm not going to say that. I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to say it, but you could come
Just
and
crash it.
knock on the door. I don't know what's happening with that invite list. But you could stop by the hub and just see if there's anything happening there. And maybe but they might actually encourage, depending on what the turnout is, for if you're interested in this type of thing, to come over and meet some of the broadcasters and discuss those things. So the hub is, I'm doing probably the wrong thing, but I think it's the right thing at the end of the day. So it's just behind this white building beside us, just down this alley. It's open for delegates regardless, where it's closed for this, but I just ask. I think it'll happen. I don't know what happened with the invite list, so that's why I'm just hoping. Anyway.
Don't just say it yet.
Okay. I'm not signing a form to that. So thank you everyone for coming, and thank you for offering that. I'm totally inspired to help make things happen for you. So have a great next little while, and we have our micro meetings event happening here at 2:00. It's So these are roundtable one-on-ones where you get to meet broadcasters, development execs, distributors with a completed project or project in development to meet one-on-one with them in round-style one-on-one meetings. So that happens at 2 o'clock. You'll be gathering outside Cinema 5, and there's lots of spaces left to sign up for if you didn't have a chance to pre-register. Lindsay has something she wants to say. Lindsay is the person organizing this bad boy. It's a great event. It's like there's over 20 different decision makers coming, so we can always try and fit in at least a couple meetings for you. So it's gathering out here, I'd say around 1:45 to 2 to kind of check in and sign up for potential meetings.